This lesson, we're going to aim to answer the question, what is life? And I'm going to just mention that not all scientists agree on what the characteristics of living things are. Depending on the biology class you take, you could have the 4 characteristics that we're going to learn here. You might find in a college biology class you take someday that there are 5 characteristics or 6 characteristics, and some of them may be different than the ones that I mentioned here. So I'm going to do my best to give you a general list of 4 characteristics of living things. Just so you know, though, there is disagreement in this list, and somebody else may give you a different list later. And it's just because biologists can't agree on what the key characteristics are. But here are my 4 characteristics, and the 4 characteristics that will be used in the textbook using this semester. First of all, something is living if it contains DNA. You've probably heard of DNA. DNA is just the shorthand of deoxyribonucleic acid. Now, you don't really need to know a whole lot about what that means other than that DNA is a building block of life. We're going to learn about DNA in the next section, so I'm not going to spoil it by giving you too many details here, but containing DNA is one of the characteristics of living things. Another characteristic, living things must have some kind of a method to extract energy from its surroundings and convert that energy to a different type of energy that they can use. So you can think of a plant with sunlight. Plants have to be in sunlight in order to make food for themselves from the sunlight. If they just were set in sunlight, if plants were just like a collection of chemicals set out in sunlight, just being in sunlight doesn't mean that you can use that light to actually sustain your life processes. For example, you, the person listening to this, you do not contain the kinds of compounds needed for photosynthesis. You don't have any chlorophyll in your cells. So when you go outside, you can feel the sunlight feels warm on your skin. There's energy there. You can feel it as warmth, but you can't use that energy to sustain your life processes. Plants have to have a method for converting that energy to energy that sustains, and we'll talk about that later. That's actually going to be the thing that we talk about that has the most terms associated with it and takes the longest. Next, another characteristic of life forms are able to sense changes to their surroundings and react to those changes. For an example, a boulder can react to changes in its surroundings. If a boulder is perched on the edge of a cliff and the cliff weathers and gets eroded away, eventually the boulder will respond by falling down off the edge of the cliff. But because the boulder didn't sense any of that was happening, that means a boulder does not meet that definition of what it takes to be a living thing. You have to be able to sense and react. And then finally, we're going to talk about this one as well. Reproduction is another important characteristic of living things. I usually encourage students to think of this on 2 levels. First of all, parts of an organism may reproduce. Right now, you are currently reproducing the cells in your body. Cells are dying in your body and they're reproducing to replace themselves. And then also the entire organism must be able to reproduce itself to have the longevity it needs to survive over generations. All right, these are the 4 characteristics of living things. In the next several videos, we're going to spend some time talking about each one of these in more detail.